Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeremy Lasage with the Fairfax County Office of Public Affairs. If you haven't heard, it is hot here in Fairfax County, and it's going to be that way through the weekend. So we thought we'd get a few people together, talk about what this heat advisory means for Fairfax County, what you can do to stay out of the heat, give you some safety tips, and what to do if you happen to see somebody who looks like they may need some help, especially with our homeless or more vulnerable population. So we've got three guests for you today. We're going to start with Seamus Mooney. He's our coordinator of emergency management. Hello. Hello. With Fairfax County. Maybe you could just start by telling us what the forecast is like, and I know we're in a heat advisory. What does that mean? And
Sure. So the forecast is it's going to be hot from today through essentially Monday. Today we're going to be up around 99 degrees. Tomorrow about the same. On Saturday it'll get a little bit cooler, about 93, 94. Monday a little cooler, around 91, 92 degrees. Heat advisory just means it's going to be excessive heat. It's put out by the National Weather Service to encourage people to take precautionary measures. It's all based off the heat index, and the heat index is relative humidity and heat. So the hotter it is with the higher humidity, it's going to feel much hotter. So today it will be 99 degrees, but it's going to feel like 107 because of the heat index.
That sounds real pleasant.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be through that way through the weekend. There are some places in the county where people can go if their air conditioning goes out. There are some locations in the county. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Sure. So what we encourage people to do is, with heat like this, close your blinds, try and limit the amount of sun coming into the home to try and keep the home a little bit cooler. If you don't have air, or if you've lost your air, you can go to our libraries here at our government center, or you can go to our recreation centers to just get out of the heat. And what they recommend is trying to spend at least 2 hours out of the heat if you can. You can also go to the public sector. You can go to the mall. You can go to the movies. Just spend some time out of the heat.
Okay, sounds good. And Office of Emergency Management, I know you all are constantly monitoring the situation in case if there were to be a heat emergency or large power outages. What do you all do in that situation?
So one of the things we do is obviously we send out alerts through the Fairfax alert system. People can sign up for those alerts. We put out weather information so people can plan their weekend accordingly. We are monitoring the situation through our duty officer. So any power outage or things like that, we get notified, and depending on the scale, then we'll start to respond if needed.
Perfect. Seamus, thank you so much. Appreciate it. We're going to bring in a public health nurse over here for our Facebook audience as we're live. If you have any questions, feel free to ask those. We're happy to answer over the course of this. So this is Kathleen Snow. You're a public health nurse with our health department.
I am.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Could you talk a little bit about some of the precautions people could take and what they can be doing to either stay out of the heat, or if they have to work outside, what they can do to do everything they can to stay cool?
Sure. So the goal with heat illness is to prevent it. And by preventing it, we want to make sure that people are, as much as possible, staying in an air-conditioned environment and hydrating. So hydrating means drinking more fluids than you might think is necessary. 2 to 4 glasses of liquid an hour, and stay away from caffeinated beverages or alcohol, as those tend to dehydrate us. So for our vulnerable populations, those are the very young, the very old, people with chronic illnesses, and people who have to work outside. There are a few other techniques. If you can, take your breaks in an air-conditioned area. Dress appropriately. I am not demonstrating that. Light-colored clothing, loose clothing. But we do want people to have on something that will protect them to some extent from the sun. Stay in the shade when possible, and again, make sure that people are drinking enough. The signs of heat illness range from just feeling very ill to becoming confused, profuse sweating, extreme thirst. All of those are the initial signs of heat illness, and in those cases, we want you to move that person to an interior or air-conditioned area. Start to give them fluids. If a person gets to the point where their skin feels so hot to the touch that it's alarming, or they are not sweating any longer, they are very confused, or in worst case scenario, they may have a seizure, that's a situation where you want to get 911 involved. And don't hesitate to call 911 they are adept at handling a heat emergency.
Good. That's great information. Thank you. What is the health department doing on a normal basis when there's heat like this? Are you monitoring just to make sure? Are you pushing out information, safety information messages?
The health department sends out what we call a blast fax, which is to all of the local physicians and other health agencies that we work with to keep them apprised of current concerns. And our Office of Emergency Preparedness works with the county office to make sure that we are their partners.
Great. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much. And we're going to bring in our final guest. This is Abby Dunner with the Office to Prevent and End Homelessness.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So a few questions.
Sure.
What kind of outreach do you all do to some of our more vulnerable or homeless populations?
Yeah, sure. So not a lot of people know, but we actually do have folks who are living outside in our community, in their cars, in the woods, in tents, things like that. And they're especially vulnerable to heat and other kind of extreme weather conditions. So we do provide outreach to these folks year round, to try to engage them in services and shelter and ultimately housing. But especially when it's kind of extreme weather, we definitely try to increase that outreach, make sure everybody knows that the shelters are open, that they can come in and access it and get some relief from the heat.
Okay, and have you all seen an increase in some of the people taking advantage of the emergency shelters in Fairfax County?
Yeah, we have seen a little bit of a slight increase in folks using the sites as cooling centers, aside from kind of what their normal day-to-day function is. So, yes.
Okay. And what should somebody do if they're driving down the road and they see somebody who might appear to be homeless
Sure.
and might be struggling in the heat? Is there a number they should call?
Yeah. I would say first and foremost, kind of like our health department has said, if you see somebody that you think is struggling with the heat in a way that is, makes them very vulnerable, I would say 911 is always kind of our first recommendation. But if you see somebody that you just want to let them know that there are cooling centers available, that all of our shelters are open. If you go on to fairfaxcounty.gov and you search for emergency shelter, they'll be able to find a list of all of the shelters, phone numbers, addresses, and they can let the folks know that those are available for them as an option.
Great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
We do have one question, Jeremy. We had a question on the blog yesterday. We want to bring the nurse back in.
Okay.
On the blog yesterday, the emergency blog at fairfaxcounty.gov/emergency/blog, one of the tips was staying hydrated, drink plenty of fluid, but not drink caffeinated beverages. Kathleen mentioned that. We had a comment yesterday that said the Mayo Clinic disagreed with that. So I kind of wanted to get some perspective and maybe kind of answer that question.
Well, I don't know if I can answer that question entirely because I haven't read the information on the Mayo Clinic site. However, caffeine is not specifically a diuretic, but caffeine does increase our blood pressure. That's one of the reasons why we feel a little more alert when we drink caffeine. And one of the effects of increasing our blood pressure, that increases our kidney blood flow, and that will in turn increase urine production. So indirectly, it can cause a dehydration effect.
And this is why I'm glad we bring experts onto these Facebook Lives, because I would have not been able to answer that. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Again, thank you to all of our guests. This has been hopefully very helpful information. It is going to be hot, as you heard, throughout the weekend. There are a number of resources that you heard about. You can always go to fairfaxcounty.gov, search for heat information. We have safety tips online. You heard Seamus mention Fairfax Alerts. That's fairfaxcounty.gov/alerts, where you can sign up for text information on your phone through text or email. Last resort, you can always call 703-FAIRFAX. That's a good number to remember, 703-FAIRFAX, if you just need a number to call. So again, thank you everybody, and stay cool and be safe.